Qin Huixian, the father of Chinese aerospace, was an MIT-educated rocket scientist and former director of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in the United States. He returned to his native China to head the Chinese rocketry program in the late 1950s. An avid supporter of technoscience, Chen often said that he believed governments should be run essentially like engineering departments. He brought this perspective to the Chinese government when he was elected as a member of the Politburo. Chen was the first of many scientists to take positions in government so they could work directly with communities. Leaders like Chen are called Technocrats. Technocrats are individuals with technical training and occupations who perceive important societal problems as being solvable through the scientific method, and often propose technology-focused solutions. While the term technocrat is a 20th century one, the idea of a technocracy was advocated as early as the Industrial Revolution by economic theorists like Henri de Saint-Simon. It regained popularity in the Soviet Union under the guidance of scientist and political leader Alexander Bogdanov, who saw techno-scientific governance as a way to counter the capitalist ideology of the United States. So, as leaders, what type of collaboration is important between scientists and governments or communities? Often scientists communicate from outside the government and provide data-driven results to aid the decision-making process that communities undertake. For example, groups like the Centers for Disease Control and the Environmental Protection Agency often advise decision-makers but don't have a voice in the actual legislation that takes place. But what if they worked from inside communities or governments? Issues concerning scientific research and technological innovation appear with increasing frequency on the agendas of public and political debate. The outcome in many cases is an open conflict among technical scientific experts, policymakers, businesses, and communities, which frequently paralyzes decision-making. How can the increasing need to take decisions on highly complex techno-scientific matters be reconciled with community and government participation? The truth is, often, the public and political decision-makers are extremely misinformed about science and the issues raised by technology. This may be due to the artificial separations between the two camps. But what do the few examples we have say about the success of technocrats? Our first example is that of the original technocrat Alexander Bogdanov. As a scientist and political leader in the Soviet Union, Bogdanov advocated for the rise of a technocratic society. He pushed the Soviet government to allow scientists and engineers to hold bureaucratic positions, and by the 1970s, nearly 80% of the Politburo had engineering degrees. One of the great triumphs of this collaboration was the Russian space program. On the other hand, Soviet collectivist farming was a complete failure. While not always successful, the link between community and science leaders was strong in the USSR. After China's Glorious Revolution, the government of Mao Zedong instituted advanced degree requirements for members of the political hierarchy. By the early 1990s, some 83% of the Chinese political elite held science or technology degrees, mirroring the general trend of the population. As a matter of fact, the last two standing committees, the main decision-making government council, all but one had engineering degrees. However, this effort hasn't trickled down to the community level, where most leaders are still political appointees. Because of this, national science efforts have been very successful, such as the construction of the Three Gorges Dam. However, issues of local pollution and regional techno-scientific development are still lacking. Singapore sees itself as the world's premier technocracy, and they've stated that, quote, "Our technocratic system has shielded civil servants from interference, giving them the space to work out rational, effective solutions for our problems. Having techno-scientists in government has allowed them to increase research spending by more than $40 billion since 1990. However, Singapore's system is unique in its insistence that techno-scientific leaders also be strong communicators and managers. They view these skills as essential to successful collaboration between scientists and communities. As a matter of fact, they've begun to export these skills to neighboring countries like India. So what have we learned from these examples? It's that when thought of optimistically, both scientists and communities can benefit from tighter collaboration. The benefits for scientists can include understanding the legal, ethical, and social dimensions of science-based challenges, applying scientific knowledge and technical skills to address real-world problems in the community, building and strengthening personal relationships within the community, building trust in science and scientists, as well as for support for scientific research, collecting data and increasing visibility for their own work, identifying future research questions, and learning about community concerns and gaining a greater appreciation of local knowledge and community experiences. On the other hand, the benefit for communities can be accessing data and technical expertise, building scientific and technical understanding, acquiring and applying research skills, increasing credibility with decision makers, making community voices heard about critical issues, informing and participating in science research, gaining a greater understanding and appreciation of scientific issues and the scientific process, building and strengthening personal relationships with scientific and technical experts. So the question is, how can scientists help communities? In a recent survey, communities were asked about how they thought scientists could aid them. Clearly, a strong need for scientific engagement is seen by communities in several categories. The strengths of scientists are clearly emphasized, such as the ability to conduct research or to develop usable metrics. But what do scientists think they can do? When scientists were asked what they felt they could contribute to their communities, the existing model of working with elected officials and serving as assistants to the community were the most popular choices. But more scientists than ever are realizing that serving in official capacities, such as those on advisory committees or elected boards, is a viable option for helping their communities. So if we accept that collaboration between scientists and communities is important, then we have to also accept that we can always improve that collaborative process. Constant iteration is a crucial technique that can be defined in 5 steps. First, ask and listen. You have to acknowledge that there are types of knowledge beyond scientific and technical data, and listen to community members about their needs and respect their history and culture. Mutually define goals. Scientists and community members have to operate within their differing cultural norms and find ways to express themselves coherently. In general, you have to make sure you're on the same page. Applying science to help build capacity means taking scientific expertise and providing communities with the information that will make them stronger advocates for their own causes. Communicating openly and effectively involves communicating without the technical jargon that science is known for, and using words to bridge the divide that exists between science and the public. Transparency during collaboration means creating accountability and transparency to foster trust in the relationship between science and the community. And finally, this entire process can be summarized under the phrase community-based participatory science. Here are some rules of thumb. for scientists to consider when they ask the question, what are the most important tenets for techno-scientists to remember as they work with communities or governments? First, scientists often want to solve problems, but in community partnerships, they have to lead the community to solve their own problems. Scientists can't just come to work. They've got to become a part of the community. And scientists must avoid trying to be in charge and focus on being a part of the group. A personal example that I can provide for an example of a techno-science collaboration was that some years ago, while working at the EPA, I worked on a project to discover particulate phase mercury in the air and water supply. However, reaching the communities and getting them to understand how particulate phase mercury affected both their water and their air was something that proved a challenge to the existing EPA team because of their lack of experience working with urban communities. However, after presenting our findings to community leaders and offering to work with them and share our information in an honest and transparent way, we were able to not only provide them with actionable data that they could take to their elected officials, but also to develop new technologies that could help them and help us collect new data about particulate phase mercury in their environments. So to close, here's an example of a community and a group of scientists that have learned the balance of collaboration. The Union of Concerned Scientists hosted a forum called Community Connections, which explored ways to overcome barriers to collaboration and make scientist engagement more effective. The participants learned about new ways for scientists, leaders, and citizens to work together, and left with strategies and tangible advice to develop connections between scientists and communities. Thank you.
We shared common values, and most importantly, we shared a moral compass. What happened is I changed my mind. I mean, my eyes were open. Every perception and stereotype that I had of scientists went out.
I think the state of the art in science communication should be really focusing on how we listen, how we engage, how we take a step back and understand where people are, what their values are, what their concerns are. And so we try to find this balance of feeling like you have something to offer, but feeling like you don't have the answer. And if we can find somebody with that balance, that's the person we try to influence.
Where they don't look at people as less than, but they look at them as a part of how we move forward collectively as a society, that makes a difference. And then all the other communication takes place afterwards.
And so the environmental justice frame has always been to use science as a tool for emancipating, liberating, and for educating and breaking down those artificial walls that oftentimes get put up by technocrats.
The key challenge is the existence of barriers between people.